How's it going, you guys? And welcome. Good morning, Cup. We've had our differences of opinion, but mostly it's about the differences in religion that has been, well, creating a wedge in the essence of humanity as a whole. And amongst the epitome of this religious difference is the fact that the oldest two religions that has ever been prevalent in the world has been Christianity and Islam. And they've been at butting heads since as far back as we can go. But in a landmark move today, we understand the fact that Pope Francis has now officially made his way to Iraq, that he bridges the gap between these two symbolic and, well, oldest religions that have ever existed. Also, these two religions consist of the maximum number of people across the globe. Various nations have their own deities, major nations have their own sub branches, but it all boils down to Pope Francis as well as the Ayatollah of Islam being in Iraq itself. What we understand from there is the fact that Pope Francis officially landed in Iraq yesterday, and upon landing, he was greeted by the Prime Minister of Iraq. There was a big ceremony, red carpets were rolled out, all of that accords. There was a live choir singing. So, well, amongst threats of coronavirus as well as, well, sheer security threats in Iraq, considering that the region is still in turmoil, we understand the fact that Pope Francis showed unprecedented moves by still making sure that he reached there, still making sure that he conveyed his message to the people for peace rather than for conflict. He also dictated the fact that the peace between the region of Islam as well as Christianity is the most essential component to world peace today and is something that should have been accomplished a long time ago. But lack of previous efforts being made, we are today at a fact wherein this is a first of its kind. And a first of its kind accord that is brilliant for the world's peace, brilliant for the world's accordance with what humanity as a whole should actually ascertain to, should actually be. Pope, after landing, after being greeted by the Prime Minister, was then taken to the President's palace. The President of Iraq, being Barham Salih, was also seen greeting the Pope and showing his gratitude towards the Pope making his way to the nation amongst the biggest pandemic the world has seen in the past 100 years, and also seeing the fact that the Pope went out of his way, even though his own aide, even though his own ambassador to Iraq had contracted the coronavirus recently and is still infected with it. So, well, amongst all of these array of reasons not to go to a region like this to, well, put out messages of peace, the Pope nevertheless made sure that he reaches there and that send a brilliant message to the people of Iraq as well as the people of Islam across the spectrum to show how unity is the way to go forward. We also understand the fact that moving on from the capital of Iraq, from Baghdad, all the way to the holy city of Najaf in the south, which is the ancient birthplace of Abraham at Ur, and from there Mosul in the north. Now from a lot of us who have kept in the know-how of about what Mosul actually was at some point in time, well, you would be shocked to remember the fact that Mosul was actually the capital of the Islamic State when the Islamic State was prominent and prevalent across the region. Now, the Pope, in his own words, has stated the fact, and I quote, "I'm coming on a pilgrim as a penitent pilgrim to implore from the Lord's forgiveness and reconciliation after years of war and terrorism, to beg from God the consolation of hearts and the healing of wounds." You see, the Pope is heading to the very epicenter of where the Islamic State once committed atrocities against hundreds of thousands of people. And by no means is the Pope's ambitions being deteriorated by any and all security threats that might be prevalent. What we also understand is the fact that the Pope is going to hold a vigil in the Hosh al-Biera, which is a church square, which was essentially the epicenter of where the Islamic State instituted capital punishment. What we then understand is the fact that he'll head east to the town of Korkush and hold a service for the church, which was once prevalent there in all its glory, but now not so much anymore, and hold a service prayer in the remembrance of the Conception Church. What we also understand is that this church was once a focus for numerous crimes of atrocities that were committed against the people. You see, the church was used as a firing range by the Islamic State. They burnt Bibles, they burnt numerous inscriptions, they burnt church memorabilia, they burnt crosses, they burnt everything. And they committed atrocities inside of the church grounds. What we also understand, there's a black piece of scorched earth in the middle of this church, and that piece of scorched earth is supposedly all that's left of the atrocities that were committed on the church. And that is where exactly the Pope is going to hold a remembrance. Before the 2003 United States-led invasion of Iraq, upwards of 1.5 million people that were Christians lived in Iraq. But today, only about 200,000 people are left. They were all driven out by numerous atrocities, especially by the invasions and then by the Islamic State. Among the most symbolic moments, the only thing that a lot of people are looking forward to is the fact that Pope Francis is going to be meeting the Ayatollah. The Grand Ayatollah Ali Sistani is going to be meeting with Pope Francis. Now, these two spiritual leaders have massive followings in their own respected religions. And a coming together of these two figureheads, one being 84 years old, being the Pope, and 90 years old being the Ayatollah, are going to put out a joint prayer for the peace and prosperity of humanity as a whole, thereby uniting the two religions that have been at heads for as long as you and I have been alive. This marks an amazing encroachment on peace and prosperity. And what we understand from this is the fact that no matter how bad things might get, no matter how horrible things might get, no matter how many caliphates might be attempted, we understand the fact that at the end of the day, at the end of all of this, it's about unity, it's about being together, it's about spearheading a campaign in which we are all standing under the same umbrella, about being humans prior to being distinguished by our individual beliefs, about standing together against hate and making sure that nothing justifies terrorism, nothing justifies a loss of life on the grounds of religious extremism. And what we understand also is the fact that unity above all is the epitome of what humanity and human nature should ascertain towards. We'll keep you updated with everything else that the Pope does in Iraq and his visit in his pilgrim. But until then, this has been your morning cup, and I'll see you tomorrow.